Welcome again to another edition. This one is a trigger warning video. Have to put that out there. We're welcoming Joshua Shea, the corn coach. I have never heard that name before, mate. Tell us all about it.
That's because we can't say the P word on TikTok and we can't say the P word on Instagram. So instead of porn being the word that's used in social media to describe pornography, everybody uses the word corn. So
there you go. That's on you.
Here's the other thing. When I started, I actually had it was recoveringpornaddict.com was my original handle or my original URL, and it only took about 3 months for me to realize nobody wants to type porn into their browser if they're trying to get over it. So that's why I am now that corn coach.
That's a good explanation.
And I was literally watching that 70s show when I came up with the name.
Absolutely. So yeah, I encourage everyone to please share, subscribe, keep up to date. We've obviously done over 765 episodes now, which is brilliant. Obviously, we're joined by Crazy Ashley. No, I'm joking. We're joined by Nick, who's here. Hi, Annette. Hi, Teresa. Hope you're well. So yeah, pornographic addiction. I'm just going to say it straight up. Straight up, I have to ask: is sex really everything? Because they keep saying sex brings people closer. I don't know.
I don't know, because porn addiction really isn't about sex.
Exactly.
You'd have to ask somebody who was an intercourse addict.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, most couples, if there's a bit of a barrier between them, they turn to porn, don't they?
Yes, a lot of couples do, and unfortunately, doing that is like poisoning the well. According to statistics that have been released in the US over the last 5 years, you have almost a twice as likely chance of either breaking up or getting divorced if you introduce pornography into your relationship to try to spice things up. The other statistic in this area that's very telling is that now more than 50% of divorce lawyers say that one of their clients will bring up pornography. Or I should say, of divorce lawyers, they say just over 50% of cases they're dealing with, one or the other person brings up pornography allegations against the other. So it does rip partners apart.
Absolutely. Yeah, I see Ashley agreeing. Do you want to tell us a little bit?
So you and I have lightly touched on this topic, Adam, and you were very curious as to where I was coming from and why this could be a potential trigger even for me. So my husband and I have been together for almost 20 years. It'll be 20 years next month. And he was exposed to pornography as a teenager. And again, I'm not going to share too much of his story because that's for him, whatever. But anyway, as something early on in our relationship, I allowed it to come in. Okay. After some time, we had made the decision, we're not going to do this anymore. We got rid of it. We became born again Christians. And we knew that this is not something that God would want us to have in our marriage. So we got rid of it, but little by little, things kept creeping in. Not even so much the porn viewing, if you will, but it was the objectification. It was treating me as the object and looking at me as somebody who needed to meet his needs according to what a porn star does in a porn film.
Right.
So I think I was pregnant with our third son, and this is where the topic, if you will, of destruction really comes into play. One night, because during pregnancy, I was very sick all the time in the beginning, hugging the porcelain god. Good Lord, I don't wish that on my worst enemy because it is awful. And I was very sick. And for him, as you said in the beginning, Adam, is sex the most important thing? To certain men, it is. Men that have an addiction to sex or an addiction to porn, and that's their way of release, is having sex or being in some sort of sexual intimacy with their partner. That's where it does become very important. And one night we're laying in bed and he says to me, when we are intimate, I'm not thinking of you. I'm thinking of the women in these videos. Do you want to talk about heart-shattering, ripping everything out of my chest of, excuse me? That was the breaking point in our marriage. We were so far rock bottom at that point because during pregnancy, I was not able to meet his intimate needs that he was seeking. I was constantly turning him away, which for him meant rejection. For him, that meant I'm not good enough. Why doesn't she want to be with me, type of a thing. And he started to internalize it when it had absolutely nothing to do with that. It was I was not physically capable to be that for him in those moments. So our marriage went through a very difficult season, and it even came to the point of I told him we need to seek help. We need to go to the pastors at church. We need to talk to them. We need to do something. He was to the point of I'm going to leave work and crash the car into a concrete wall because he was so afraid of losing me because of what he had divulged. So in that moment, we sought out counseling at church, and the pastor told him, you are a sex addict. You have a problem. And from that point, it was a pride and ego thing for him. He didn't want to go back for more counseling. And it was something that I struggled with as far as, okay, if I'm going to surrender myself to this man that I am married to and have been married to for quite a few years already, having children with, can I get past the fact of he may not be thinking about me? Can I move beyond that? And I battled with it mentally to trust him again for a very long time. And there are moments that it still creeps into my head of wondering, what is he thinking about? Even years later, 3 more kids later, that still creeps into my mind. And I have to almost stuff it because, to be honest, I don't want to ask the question because I don't want to know the answer. Mm-hmm. What woman wants to know that her husband is not thinking about her during sex? Like, none that I can think of. So for me, it's very important that I have my mindset right, that we are very protectant of you're not alone in the vehicle with a female. You are not in a meeting alone with a female. Granted, yes, he's in the construction industry, so he does do estimates, where that's that interaction with women by himself. But at the same time, there's just certain protections that we have put into place. When he was working in an office, you don't have the door closed in a meeting if you can help it. You go in a glass, windowed conference room. There's just certain things that we do now to make sure that that doesn't happen. And if he starts to get into the moments of objectifying me, and treating me like that object, I call it to his attention and say, hey, buddy, I'm your wife. I am not your porn star. I am not this and I am not that. This is who I am. So it's creating those boundaries as well. And that's why when you said, Ashley, this is our topic, I was like, oh, okay, I can navigate through this. But that's why it is so detrimental to a marriage and to a relationship.
Yeah.
And when you've been in that position, you can recognize when, say, another woman comes to you and she says, well, my husband doesn't want to be intimate with me. My husband, he seems very standoffish, or he doesn't want to have sex. I'm in the mood, but he's not in the mood. My first question is he viewing porn? Because I've been in that position, I know what the warning signs, if you will, are those particular things to be looking for. But the other piece is men and even women, because women can be addicted to porn as well, but men get very good at hiding it. But when there's this immense amount of guilt that comes over you, and you know you should not be viewing it, and you should be taking in your wife and in that relationship, it's a nasty thing, and it is becoming so consumed, especially in today's world. So consumed, and it is a destroyer. It is a destroyer.
Yeah. What do you think, lads?
Well, I wonder where, at what point it becomes like a problem in the sense of, if you look at the statistics, how many people access porn, regularly, it's actually a lot, it's a large amount of society. I think there's a BBC documentary not long ago, and they talked to Pornhub, which is one of the biggest commercial porn websites, and they said that for the UK, 15 million people access it from the UK, which is quite a large amount of adults from the UK, and they probably say 1 in 10 adults regularly look at porn. And I think if you look generally at the figures for how many people access porn regularly, it's quite high, and it is quite easy to do it, and it's quite a normalized thing. It's not, so I wonder at what point does it become a problem, and why does it become a problem to some people, not others? And I think it because it is something that's been around for long, obviously a long time, and it's it's very freely accessible. It's almost, and like a lot of these websites like Pornhub, and other ones like that, so they're not sort of they're almost sort of mainstream in that sense, and if you look at the figures, it's incredible, how many people access it, and and how these sort of sites. So I'm just probably what you would know about, Joshua.
Well, I've actually got the figures here. It says here in 2022, about 20% of, I don't even know if this is just UK, by the way, about 20% of male users aged 16 to 21 watch porn weekly, compared to 14% of female users in the same age group. In 2024, almost 1 in 10 respondents aged 25 to 49 reported watching porn most days, and around 11% of respondents aged 18 to 24 reported watching porn content between 1 and 3 times a week.
Yeah. So looking back since I was a teenager, in the sort of 70, in the late 70s, all up to now, it's always been something, which is when we're a teenager with adults, something that's talked about and looked at by different degrees, and I suppose in the UK, drugs, some people do it, some people don't, but it's legal. But I guess with porn, it's kind of certain extent. But I just wonder, I don't know what you think, Josh. What it's why is it? Great problems, kind of, and obviously relationships and addiction. So Is it?
I'm going to go off here for a couple minutes probably, and I'm going to say some things that were actually very contrary to what you all said. But first thing I'd say is, Adam, I haven't heard statistics that low in years and years and years. I don't know where you got those statistics, but depending on the study that you look at least here in the U.S., and again, it depends exactly how you define addiction, but between 12 and 20% of men who use pornography show an addiction towards it. Between 8 and 12% of women who use pornography show an addiction for it. As far as overall porn use, and this number comes from 2023, is that of people in this world who use the internet, 90.5% of men who use the internet in this world look at porn at least once a month. That doesn't mean they're addicts. That just means they look. 60.2% of women who use the internet at least once a month, or I'm sorry, use the internet, look at pornography at least once a month. And you are going to see massive, massive explosions in these numbers right when you get to the point of going back in time to where high-speed internet started, because that changed everything. No, you know, before that, pornography was a product for straight white men, because they could trust straight white men would show up to the theaters. Straight white men would show up to the peep shows. So the whole industry was based on the straight white male. Once you had high-speed internet, now people didn't have to go to these places they didn't want to be seen. Now people could get this stuff in the comfort of their own home, and nobody would know about it. So over the last 10 years or so, it's not straight white males who we see the biggest percentage growth as porn addicts. It's men of color, it's women, it is people of religion, especially in the Roman Catholic Church and especially in the LDS Church. Those are the two biggest. So we're seeing all these other non-white male areas, non-straight white male areas explode, because finally you can make money on pornography in a very niche area. You can make pornography that appeals to this kink or appeals to this fetish. And unlike in, you know, the late 70s, early 80s, when you had to do it on film and send it out to 500 theaters and wait for them to send the money back, the four of us could cast, film, edit a porn movie by the evening, all from the same rooms we're in now, and have it making money on a website by the end of the day. So the overhead is next to nothing. That's why there's so much porn out there. I saw a statistic about a year ago, so I can only imagine where it is now, that if you started watching Pornhub and watched every video 24/7 and went backward in time, you wouldn't stop until the 1840s.
Wow.
So that's 24/7, 180 years of porn just on this one website. So that's number one. This is a huge, huge, huge problem. Number two, Ashley, I am so sorry for what you went through. What you are describing is absolutely classic betrayal trauma. Absolutely classic. About half of my clients are the partners of porn addicts, overwhelmingly, you know, females who are in that place of not having trust. That's one of the reasons I became a certified betrayal trauma coach, was because if you're going to help this problem in a relationship, you have to be able to help the partner as well. It's like an alcoholic's wife. It's like a drug addict's wife. You know, addiction is a disease. And if you're stuck around somebody who's diseased for a long time, you're going to start to show different symptoms. And then to be betrayed by them, finding out that you have these rules in your relationship and they've been lying to your face. Well, good Lord, what else have they been lying about? How can I ever believe them again? And I'm guessing, Ashley, if you are like 99.999% of my betrayal clients, you would probably say it's not even the porn, it's the lying that was the bigger sin of that. Now that said, I don't know enough about your husband to diagnose him, but I would also urge people to recognize who are diagnosing them. I'm sure your clergy is a wonderful man, but does he actually have any training in sex addiction? Because what you're describing from your husband doesn't sound necessarily like addiction. It sounds like somebody who was just completely ignoring your boundaries. And that's one of the things that I have to say to people a lot is that, maybe he's not a narcissist. Maybe he's not an addict. Maybe he's just a run of the mill butthead. And that's a lot of the case because with addiction, and what really let me know about that, Ashley, was the part where he said, I was thinking about other women. Because that's not common among porn addicts. It may be common among intercourse addicts, but I don't know in particular area to speak on it. For people who were porn addicts, like I was for 24 years, it really very quickly has nothing to do with the naked women and the naked men doing their naked things on the page. I can tell you that it is absolutely just about, even if you don't understand it at the time, it's about chasing those brain chemicals. The ones that the serotonin, the dopamine, the oxytocin, the endorphins, you learn generally at a very young age, somewhere, these days around 11 or 12, that if you use this stuff, you feel good. Most people, because they're kids when they start using this, naked people doing this equates to me feeling good. So seeing this stuff must make me feel good. I bet doing this stuff will make me feel good. That's the story that almost all kids get in their head. But unfortunately, there are some who are having trauma who, for whatever reason, cannot navigate it because they don't have the skills. They stumble into a behavior, whether it's food, whether it's video games, whether it is porn. It can be gambling as well, all these different process addictions. And really what happens is that becomes the problem solving technique. That becomes the anxiety and the stress management technique. Because myself, I was 12 years old when I became an addict. If I now know how to solve my problems, if I don't have to worry about anxiety or stress because I can run away to porn, and a couple of years later it also became alcohol, if I can run away to these things, why do I have to learn to deal with the world on the world's terms? I don't need to have these skills. I've got these naked people that I can always run off to. But what happens over time is that you start to realize you have an addiction. You start to recognize that you're not using the way that the other people are using. And you start to recognize you don't even care what's on the screen anymore. You will add one of the real dichotomies of addicts, porn addicts, is that they will tell me that they will spend 20, 30 minutes trying to find that perfect piece of pornography to finish with on a session, but then 5 minutes later, they can't tell you what they finished with. I have so many clients who tell me they don't even care what they look at anymore. It's just that this is the only way they know how to function. They need to get those chemicals that they are so addicted to at the time. And that's what I want everybody to ultimately remember here, is that this is the brain disease of addiction. And it can be any kind of addiction. And it doesn't mean that you're immoral. It doesn't mean that you're a pervert. It doesn't mean that you're a bad person. It means that you're a sick person. And there is a way to get through it as an addict. And there is a way to get through it as the betrayed spouse. So.
Absolutely. Well, I've got a couple of questions from that. Annette's actually put in the comments, from a relationship view, it has been my experience that porn has been both a positive and negative aspects in my relationships. Now, have you got any feedbacks on that? Because I know it can be damaging watching porn because it feels like rejection, abandonment issues towards that partner when someone's watching someone else. But why positive?
Well, I would think that, everybody's a little bit different.
Yeah.
And you know what? If this doesn't lead to addiction, if this does lead to you having a better relationship, who am I to tell you not to do it? I can tell you the stats, I can tell you the divorce rates, but we have to recognize the reality is most people can handle their porn. Most people can handle their alcohol. Most people can handle their gambling. This is a minority within a larger group. And one of the things that, I sadly, have to tell betrayed clients a lot is, your betrayal is real regardless of whether he is an addict or not. That's really not the important thing here. How you feel is important. Whether he's just a bad partner or he's got a terrible illness, your beliefs and your thoughts are absolutely valid. So, you know what? I don't know how you reach the point that you and your partner are going to swingers campgrounds and getting it on with a lot of people. I have no idea the path to there. My wife and I will never explore the path to there. I don't know. I mean, I would love to be a fly on the wall during some of those discussions when the first person brings it up, because my wife would just look at me and laugh, and I would look at her and laugh, because we're not going to do that. But if that's your healthy sexuality, if you're on the same page, if this isn't causing emotional or mental anguish legitimately, and you're not just lying to yourself, then as long as it's legal, go ahead.
Yeah. Obviously, she does go. She does have a question, but before I get to her question, what is the difference? And this is to everyone. What is the difference between watching porn and watching someone on OnlyFans? Because OnlyFans has creeped up, hasn't it? Where people want to pay someone to send them naked pictures, naked videos.
Is there any difference? That's it.
Is there a difference? I think he's froze. Are you there, Josh?
Yeah. Sorry, I was just muting while my dogs are going crazy downstairs. There is no difference, and this is one of the most frequent questions I get. We have to remember, a couple things about pornography. Number one, we all know what pornography is. It's that XXX stuff of naked people doing naked stuff. Then we have to remember it also comes down to how you use this stuff. If you're looking at people in bathing suits and you're getting the same thrill you get from that you get from pornography, is there any real difference? A lot of it has to do with the intent. A lot of it has to do with how you are using the material. And it's important to recognize, one of the big questions I get, off of the OnlyFans one is, well, if my boyfriend sends me pictures, if my girlfriend sends me pictures, and I use those, is that really porn? And the answer is, of course it is. Just because you know the person in the video or in the picture, it doesn't mean it's not porn if you're using it for pornographic purposes. If you're using it the way you would use something that you find on Pornhub, why is it different because you know the person? Or you've interacted with the person? Or even if the person is you, if you're watching videos of you and your partner, and you masturbate to pornography, and you're doing this to videos of you and your partner with the intent of having an orgasm, you're watching it the exact same way. Everybody doesn't view it the same way. And I'll tell you a quick story. My daughter's now 25, so she doesn't live here anymore. But 10 years ago, my wife and daughter got so many Victoria's Secret catalogs. Like, they would both get 2 copies of each one. Now, Women in lingerie never did anything for me. I don't know why. That's probably another episode, but they never did anything for me ever. So when I saw Victoria's Secret catalogs, to me, it was junk mail. To me, it was stuff that was just clogging up the end tables. Didn't care about that at all. Fast forward to me being at rehab for porn addiction. And one of the things that is unique is that a lot of times people who still don't believe they're porn addicts have to explain to you why they're a little different. And a gentleman who was in his 50s came in and he said, I'm not a porn addict like the rest of you. I grew up looking at the J.C. Penney and Sears catalogs. I looked at the bra ads in the back. That was my pornography when I was a kid because I couldn't get Playboy and the others. So now I like to look at porn. I like to look at women in lingerie. I don't look at the kind of pornography that you guys look at. I don't look at pornography. I don't have a pornography addiction. My wife thinks I do, but I don't have a pornography addiction because I just look at women in their underwear. And it's like, if you're using it for the same reason the rest of us are using it, no matter what we're into, yours happen to be lingerie, it's all porn addiction. You know, maybe it should be called sexually explicit material addiction. Maybe porn throws it off too much for some people, but if it looks like porn, if it acts like porn, it's probably porn, however you want to semantic yourself away from it.
I suppose it's that move away, both with like Pornhub and OnlyFans, it's a move away from porn companies, whether they're very small ones or big ones, to what, you know, in Pornhub there's a lot of sort of individuals or couples submitting stuff in theory, and with OnlyFans it's supposedly the same individual people making money out. So I suppose but that's a change reflecting the extent the change we're seeing, like you touched earlier in the industry, is it's a lot of it is, yeah.
OnlyFans crossed one of the last lines of pornography that hadn't been crossed yet. It created porn of people you knew. And that's a very powerful thing. You know, I think any of us who ever looked at a Playboy magazine when we were young what would it be like if I saw a girl I knew in here? What would it be like to see this? And now, the moment that these boys and girls, because plenty of boys are on OnlyFans as well, the moment they turn 18, they can start their DIY porn empire from the privacy of their own home. If you go back to January 1st, 2020, which was about a month before the pandemic hit big, there was about 300,000 people creating content on OnlyFans. These days, the CEO at the beginning of this year said there's 3.1 million people creating porn on OnlyFans. Wow. So in just 4 years, we have seen 2.8 million people join the ranks of porn stars in this world, creating this material to put out there.
Wow.
Yeah, that's quite crazy statistics. I mean, that growth is, you know, is enormous.
And that tells you the real attitude switch in society. When people wonder, you know, what changed, it's high-speed internet presenting it to everybody. When I was in high school in the mid-90s, if the super sexy cheerleader and her hunky quarterback boyfriend had been at the beach and somebody took a Polaroid picture of them in their bikini and his little short shorts and their great bodies are showing, people would have passed that thing around the lunchroom like it was a joint to take a look at it and wanting to see it and wanting to know. But these days, you don't have to do that, because these days, every 15 and 16-year-old kid is basically expected to have half-naked photos on Instagram of themselves. It's just part of the culture. So while I certainly believe that, you know, 40s, 50s, and 60s, we were far too conservative when it came to having healthy sexuality and conversations about healthy sexuality and attitudes towards healthy sexuality. I think we've swung way in the other direction, and now things are way too open and way too liberal. And since we're not going to ever get rid of pornography, we need to start educating, because every 11-year-old kid with one of these can watch porn until the day they die. When I was 12 years old, the toughest part about porn was getting your hands on it.
Exactly.
So yeah, I suppose that's a big thing, isn't it? You know, we all become aware of pornography like quite a young age, and the whole thing of, you know, again, I don't talk from the UK, but you know, sexting, of sending sexual images. I mean, it was a big thing, you know, recently in the, you know, last few years of children, their teens, early teens doing that, and you know, obviously, you know, how we look at how they sort of clamp down on that, because obviously, you know, it wasn't, you know, it was the sort of teenagers were doing it in a kind of a normalized way, but actually the consequences was that they were exchanging pornography, and it was actually, there were, you know, there's a whole discussion around, you know, actually it's quite a serious thing they're doing. So I suppose there's that element of, yeah, you know, children quite young, you know, think about pornography, 11, 12, 13, 14, whatever it is, yeah. So that's the biggest, most vulnerable age, isn't it? You know, that's potentially when these things have the biggest effect.
Well, and the number one 5-year age group of porn consumers is 12 to 17. That's why you should never believe a single Pornhub statistic, because when you look at them when they say they're age users, gee, they don't have any under 18. That's amazing. Isn't that amazing? And
Yeah.
despite the fact that what's known as faux cest, I mean, it's disgusting, but it's fake incest pornography. That is the number one by far genre in the world today.
Seriously.
It's stepmom, stepsister, even going into real family relations. Now, 99% of it is fake. 99% of those videos up front say these are actors. But you cannot go onto Pornhub. Pornhub will list what their, you know, most search terms are, what their most popular things are. And you'll see all the familiars, but you will not see any of the incest related categories, because you cannot type the word incest into most porn sites. That's how they get around saying, we don't have any incest videos. Well, you know what? If you want to type in the word stepmom, type in the word stepbrother, type in the word uncle or aunt into any of these porn sites, and you are going to see hundreds of thousands, if not more, scenarios where the 2 or more performers are pretending to be family members. That is by far the number one genre of pornography for about the last 5 or 6 years, but you'll never see that reported anywhere.
I suppose that's part of the challenges. You know, a lot of the statistics we all, you know, we all know or looking at. Yeah, how accurate are they? Because by the nature, like you said, these platforms be protective over who visits it and what they look at. And also, but the nature is quite still, you know, we may say it's very open, but actually, to an extent, it's still a private, to an extent, a lot of private and sort of secretive things. So I think by nature of it, yeah, and people have problems as well. You know, obviously, it's not everyone seeks help. You know, not everyone knows they've got problems. So it's very hard to assess actually how big a problem is it. You know, how many people look, you know, access porn regularly. I suppose that's the thing. It's hard to, because of the nature of what, you know, pornography is hard to really.
Well, and there's also the education part, because so many people have not had experience with other kinds of addiction or other kinds of addicts in their life, that they believe, oh, well, if I go 2 or 3 weeks not watching pornography, I'm cured, I'm recovered. And trying to explain that to a 21-year-old guy, why no, just because you don't look doesn't mean you're cured. That's one of the toughest parts about what I do. That's one of the reasons I go on shows like this, is to, you know, inform them that no, just stopping pornography is not recovery from pornography. It's just the first step.
And this is where the next question comes in. And Kerry, I'm ignoring your comment. I know actually you've noticed it, but anyway, no, it's basically let's put, when does one go from entertaining yourself from time to time and addiction, like with alcoholics, is one drink a day, to all day watching. Now, I can admit straight up, I'm a recovering alcoholic. I'm an addict. But
So, it's really not about the number you had that day.
No.
It has nothing to do with the number you had that day. I was an alcoholic too. And I always tell people that, I needed 4 beers when I was 14 years old. Then I needed a 6-pack when I was 18. I needed a case by the time I was 25. By the time I was 30, I had to leave beer and start drinking harder stuff because I wasn't feeling it. It escalates like everything else out there. Every addiction escalates because you're not getting the same hit that you were before. It's why people who gamble have to bet more. And yes, this is true with pornography too, where a lot of addicts will start out with looking at a single person, looking, at art pictures or whatever. It can quickly devolve into hardcore material that if you opened a door and saw it behind the door, you would shut the door and run away, scared of what you saw. But because you have an addiction or even an advanced addiction, you will watch certain things that is not congruous with your values, that is not congruous with your beliefs. But if it's going to do the trick and get those chemicals flowing, you'll look at it.
Absolutely. Yeah, well, obviously, I was once one of them with a work experience, and I'm going to mention it, Kerry. I really am, because I know, Ashley, you're going to try and pin it up anyway. You are. But yeah, when I was at work experience, my boss, he was handing me magazines all the time when I was a teenager, because that's what they do. You can get them anywhere, from the local store, from work, anywhere. You can get hold of them. So it's just what to do with them. And
and that's why I say you can't prevent this in society.
No.
And it would be a waste of time to try, because as long as man has been able to draw on cave walls, we've been drawing depictions of sexuality. You can go back, go into any great museum in this world, go to the ancient and medieval exhibit and look at the pottery and some of the stuff that's painted on there. It's pretty X-rated. What is still considered the best sex guide by a lot of people, the Kama Sutra, comes out of very, very conservative India, hundreds and hundreds of years ago. So there's nothing fundamentally wrong with being curious about sexuality, especially when you're around the age of puberty. That's when you naturally get interested. And healthy sexuality is an important, wonderful thing. But so many of our kids these days are being left with their own devices, discovering this stuff, realizing that, or not realizing it, but this flood of chemicals is making them feel good, and they start to equate it with the pornography and just go deeper and deeper into addiction. And that's why we have so many, especially men, between the ages of like 20 and 35 who can't have a normal relationship, who don't have the skills to be around women or men in a normal relationship, because they've been just wasting their brain away with these chemicals for so long, and they never stopped and developed the anxiety management skills, the stress management skills, the problem solving skills that they should have developed back when they were young. They just held on to this thing for so long because it was the one thing they could control. They felt like they had control. They feel like they have power when they use this kind of stuff, and that's why they keep going with it.
Absolutely. Well, and next part, is porn addiction listed under sex addiction or separately?
Well, if you look at most psychiatric organizations around the world, it's not listed at all. The World Health Organization now lists sexual impulse disorder as a diagnosable condition. And the Addictive Medicine Institute, whatever it's called in Vancouver, Canada, they also recognize porn addiction. But like here in the US, the APA doesn't recognize it yet. It's just not there yet because they haven't done the studying long enough of this. And I think it was one of those fringe kind of things. Like they need to look at video game addiction just as much as they need to look at pornography addiction.
Grand Theft Auto.
But at the end of the day, and my therapist friend of mine puts, at the end of the day, gambling addiction is listed by the DSM here in America right now as a diagnosable condition. However, there is almost no insurance company that will pay for you to get treatment for it. So ultimately, it doesn't really matter what the doctors say. It matters what the insurance agencies say. And insurance agencies are not paying for anybody to have any of these fringe type of issues dealt with. I mean, when I went to rehab for my alcoholism, I was there 10 weeks. They stopped paying at the end of 7 weeks, and I had to pay out of pocket for the last 3 weeks. Yep, they just, the insurance industry, and unfortunately, way too many people in the world as a whole still seem to believe if you can't see the boo-boo, there is no boo-boo, so we don't have to treat the boo-boo. But we all know it's there. And when people say something idiotic to me like, well, there's no such thing as porn addiction because the DSM doesn't say it's there. I hope that you can live with that kind of ignorance the rest of your life, because that means you'll never find out the truth. That those of us who were addicts, those of us who were partners of addicts, know the truth. And, you know, the APA will catch up with us, not the other way around.
I'm surprised people think, you know, there's, you know, don't believe there's a porn addiction, because wherever there's pleasure, there's a risk of addiction. You know, like alcohol, drugs, you know, porn, sex. I mean, anything that's pleasurable, you know, like you say, stimulates those brain chemicals, gives you escapism, relief, pleasure. You know, then it's obviously going to be a high risk of being an addiction related to that. You know, so it to me is a no-brainer, really, isn't it? Anything in life. And you know, you could potentially get pleasure from, could potentially lead to addiction. Some people.
Well, and that's what one of the big questions I get in my coaching is, so what am I supposed to replace the porn with? That's an interesting one. You're not supposed to replace it with anything, because you're not supposed to get that intoxicated feeling. That is a creation of yourself. I can tell you how to get all those things in healthy ways, but you're not supposed to get this toxic amount that is leading to actual brain damage. So what do you replace it with? You're not supposed to feel this good. I can make a list of things that will make you feel great. All of them very dangerous for you. But the first time you try them, it'll probably feel great. That doesn't mean you should do it.
Absolutely.
It's the addiction to the high, essentially. You know, that high of from the dopamine, whatever feeling they get from it, yeah. Rather than interesting, yeah.
What do you think, Ashley?
Yeah, I'm quite quiet.
I'm just, you know, taking it in, if you will. I told Adam that I probably would not say very much beyond what I say in the beginning. But it all makes sense. But the other thing I think that we also need to touch on is when you're utilizing something like pornography for self-pleasure, what that does, not just to the relationship in and of itself, but what that can do to the hormone levels over time, and what that does to men as they, you know, are trying to go into a sexual experience. Are you experiencing things with PD because it's not driving enough with enough dopamine hit and all of the highs that come with the self-pleasure and watching the pornography? So are you failing let's call it what it is, in the bedroom, because you have done the self-pleasure. Like, it has so many other effects beyond like just that that intimate relationship. So many effects, and people don't equate it to that. It's, oh, let's pop a Viagra, let's pop an ED pill. Well, that's such a problem. Like, not all the time anyway, but a lot of times that's where all of those issues come from, because men should have high testosterone levels. And I'll tell you, when there was another bout in our marriage where my husband stopped chasing me, I knew something was wrong hormonally with him. Because when you're in cue and you're in tune with your spouse, you can recognize those things. Oh, something is off. So what's going on here? What do we need to address? What do we need to talk about? Where do we need to get you tested? What things do we need to do to make sure that you're functioning at your optimal level? Because that's what can happen. And ladies, your husband should be chasing you. They shouldn't be chasing after a figurative woman in a movie, in a magazine, and wherever else. They should be chasing you. So again, I have done, especially now that I've been on this journey of even just rediscovering who I am and the self-care path I've been on over the course of the last 6 years, I've really had to have my own mindset shifts of, to keep my husband's attention and to keep him engaged on me and on our marriage, and to make sure he's chasing after me. Maybe it means I need to show a little skin. Maybe it means I have to put on the sexy underwear, or whatever I know that grabs his attention and gets him to think about me. So when your man can see you, whether you love your body or not, he loves you. So when he can visualize you in all of your glory, which means you have to be vulnerable and you have to be willing to expose yourself to him. That's why you're with him. And if not, then maybe you shouldn't be in that relationship. But when you can do that and feel safe and secure and feel sexy, knowing that he loves you and he wants you, he desires you, he craves you, like the Bible intended for him to do that. And yes, I'm going to bring my religion into it, because God created sex. He created man and he created woman, period, nothing in between. But when that is allowed to happen and you can fully enjoy one another, what better way than having him focus on you than some fictitious whatever she is in the movies and in the magazines and on the apps and all the things. So being willing to surrender to that, that's why in my marriage, I know that sex is important. Sex is very important in my marriage. So that means I need to keep the attention of my husband, not just for my own mental protection of the things that we've gone through and the story that we have, but also for the benefit of my husband and making sure that he's at optimal levels. Because if I notice something is off, that's my gauge of, okay, where are we having a disconnect here? Where do you need extra support? So it's really having those hard conversations as well of, okay, listen, what is it that, I can do for you in that way to make sure that we are intimate, or that we have that bond and that connection with each other that makes it so you don't need to seek this out, or that can assist, in our intimate levels with each other. And again, it's this song and dance, but you have to be willing to own your part in the pornography. Maybe you didn't specifically allow it, but maybe you weren't surrendering to exposing yourself with your spouse. Maybe there was a disconnect in your sexual relationship where you pushed him away so many times, and vice versa. that you've turned to pornography, because if you're not going to get it from your spouse or your partner, you have to get it from somewhere. So where was the disconnect? So you have to be willing to own your responsibility in the part as well. Because I had to own allowing it into my marriage and allowing it into my relationship. That was on me. So I had to take responsibility of that, and I had to own that. So it wasn't just my husband who was exposed to it as a teenager and, you know, carried it. It was me as well. So where do you maybe need to take ownership of it? Because again, if your husband or your spouse, partner, whatever, not getting it at home, they will seek it out in other places, period. Because it is that human nature and need for connection, whether it's connection with yourself or connection with somebody else. They will seek it out.
Okay, let me ask this. I love everything what you said. I really do. But chasing women, yeah. Chasing your spouse, yeah. But men are supposed to be chased as well. Because it should be that equal thing. Otherwise, the men are going to be feeling devalued also. But
yes,
yeah,
I get where you're going with that.
Yes, you do. But as what Annette's put, what it, because obviously you meant to like exposed to feel loved. But what if you've experienced sexual abuse?
And those again, those are conversations that you have to be willing to have with your spouse, your partner, of saying, hey, look, I need you to be patient with me. I was abused. I understand that you want to love me, but I need you to love me in a different way. I know sex might be important to you, but I need you to be able to go at my pace when I'm ready for that. And if you can't have those conversations with your spouse or the person that you're in a relationship with, then again, maybe that's not the right relationship with you, for you. So it goes back to setting the boundaries, and it goes back to having the tough conversations. And if you're standoffish, they're going to feel that, and they're going to wonder, what the hell? Did I do something wrong? Like, why does she not want to have sex with me? Why does she not want to be intimate with me? You know, all of those things. So it really, again, comes down to the conversation. But it's also, yes, men want to be desired as well. They want to be chased after. But when you think about the hormone situation and the chemical balances of men and women, women are not designed to have high levels of testosterone, which is the sex driving hormone. So we are different. We need to be looked at as, it's often referred to as the slow cooker. You have to start by feeding our love language and doing things for us that will ultimately end with the result that you desire. So yes, you can flirt with your spouse, you can flirt with your husband, you can do all of those things, and I'm saying to do them, absolutely. But at the same time, men have to remember that we don't have that same, let's just jump into bed. Like, we're not like that. We can't just flip a switch like a man can. That's not us. So if you are a woman and you're struggling with that aspect, again, it goes back to the conversations. You have to have the conversation with your spouse, and you have to say, hey, look, I understand, like, wham, bam, thank you, ma'am. Let's just be honest. But that doesn't work for me. So if you want this to be the end result, this is what has to happen to get there. So it's a process for women, and men oftentimes do not understand that.
So, yeah, just for a couple of things. So yeah, with the sort of human needs thing, I think, you know, Maslow's hierarchy of human needs, you know, he places it, you know, sort of the food, shelter, air, and then he puts sex, literally straight above that. So, as one of the most basic human needs. But I think, but I think that it all comes down to communication, because we may all, to some extent, generally want or need sex, but how, when, what way? I mean, it's a very complicated thing, and it all comes down to communication. Effectively, the best sex you have is when you can communicate your partner so well that you know what they want and they know what you want and how, and that's so I think a lot of it essentially comes down to communication. It's one of the keys to relationships.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I would say the only, and I agree with 98% of what you said, Ashley, about boundaries and communication. They are the two most important things. I, however, probably would not tell a woman or tell a man that they have to step up to the plate sexually, especially if it's in any way that they don't like. If your partner tells you they want you in thongs all the time and you don't like thongs, you have every right to stand your ground and say no. If they want you to try some exotic stuff with toys or other things, and that's just not you, and that's against you, and that could even make things worse, I think it's important that you need to step up and say no and represent yourself. You should not do anything that flies in the face of what will make you comfortable, because it's going to make the situation even worse. What I did want to add, though, in listening to this, is that one of the things that I face dealing with the porn addiction when it comes to the husbands is having to hear but it's not cheating. It's not cheating. Looking at porn isn't cheating. And it's amazing how many people truly believe that in the world, including many women who have husbands using porn, who hate it, but they see cheating as only physical. And one of the things that I coach both men and women to understand is that the definition of cheating is breaking the rules. That's all it is. And if you have a rule in place that pornography will have no part in your marriage, and then you go ahead and you watch it behind your partner's back, you're breaking a rule. That's cheating. Just like if you go in and take a test in school and you've got a little sheet with the answers, that's cheating. You're not allowed to do that. Why? You're breaking the rules. If you play a card game and you put a couple aces up your sleeve and you pull them out when you need to so you can win that hand, that's cheating. That's breaking the rules. Not everybody is going to have the same rule set for their relationship, but you need to know these, because yes, if you have an agreement that pornography is not allowed and one of the partners breaks that agreement, that is absolutely cheating. 100%. No, it is not intercourse, but it is still cheating.
Oh, no, I agree 100% with you, Josh, as far as, and that's not what I necessarily want people to take away from, is being in that, like, show yourself more type thing. Yes, if there is something that you 100% are not okay with and you do not agree with and you're not comfortable with, then absolutely that's off the table. Hands down. No conversation further needed. Like, nope, I'm not doing that. And that's, again, where it comes with that communication and those boundaries. Mm-hmm. But I'm talking about, like, exposing yourself, as in, like, showing some skin, that kind of exposure. Not, okay, yeah, you need to cross that line because I want you in that and this is what I want. Like, no, by no means am I okay with that. Because there are things that I have, even in my own marriage, have had to set boundaries with, as far as that is concerned. So yes, do not compromise your values and what you're comfortable with because your spouse or your partner thinks it would be fun. No. Right. If you're like, absolutely not, I don't want that, then that's it. And if they attempt to cross that boundary, then a little more of a conversation needs to be had. And okay, that's completely 100% off limits. You violated trust, you violated the boundary. Now we're done. And you have every right to end whatever is happening. So know that, yes, you can stand in that power. Now, if we're talking, and we're not even going to touch on this because this is probably a conversation for another day, but as far as that abusiveness and that forcefulness, no, that is not okay in any way, shape, or form. And if you possibly can, stand your ground, voice what is going on. And sometimes, if you're in an abusive relationship and they're not allowing you to do that, then that's where you need to seek out help to find out how you can bring in a third party or how you can remove yourself from that situation. And it's difficult, obviously. I'm not saying it's something that's going to be easy, but by no means am I saying that it is okay for somebody to cross your boundary and to force themselves upon you. That's not okay. So when I say show your husband, like there has to be conversation ahead of time before that happens. So you know where each of you stands and where you're willing to go and where you're not willing to go. So again, like we said, it comes down to the communication. It comes down to the boundaries and set them and be firm with them.
Well, I'll tell you how I learned that in my own personal life. I was always afraid of talking about sex with everybody, including my wife. And when I finally got back from rehab and said, okay, if I'm going to begin this journey, we have to be more communicative. And she had a great line for me. She said, listen, if you want me to bring my best friend to bed and you want to videotape it and you want to have heavy metal music playing and you want to, use whipped cream and chains, you can totally ask me if you want to do that. I'm probably going to laugh and say, hell no, but you are totally okay to ask me if you want to do that. We need to communicate. I'm going to have some lines, and I'm certainly not going to go to those places, but you should feel free to say anything to me because I'm your wife. And that was one of the biggest eye-opening aha moments I had in my entire recovery, was when she said that.
Absolutely. Right. Let's wrap up. Any final words for anyone?
The only thing I want people to walk away with, because I still see this being an issue, is do not think that for some reason or another you are in a demographic that cannot be a porn addict. I have worked with people, I don't work with people under 18, but there are plenty of people under 18 who are addicts. I've worked with people all the way up into their 70s, men and women, rich and poor, smart and stupid. I'm currently working with people in 8 time zones across the world, different colors, different religions, different political views. You cannot tell yourself that there's no way I could be a porn addict because of this. That's just not the case. Anybody can be a porn addict. Anybody can be a porn addict. And if you believe you are, get some help, because it's so much better on the other side.
Absolutely. Nick?
Well, I don't know if I can add much to that from Joshua, really. Yeah, I suppose you can be addicted to anything. I mean, doesn't have to be everyone thinks of alcohol or drugs are the big ones, but I think you can potentially be addicted to anything. And where there's pleasure, there can be pain. But I suppose it's like Josh said, if you think you've got a problem with something, follow your gut instinct and get some help. Because you won't know. Sometimes you won't know you got a problem until you talk to someone, and then that sort of confirms that you do have a problem. You do need help. Sometimes you don't know. You just yourself. Is this a problem? Is it is it okay? Am I whining too much? So I think just get get some help and talk to someone, and then you can find out.
Absolutely. Yeah, Ashley.
The biggest thing, don't think you're immune to it not affecting you. Don't have the illusion that, oh, it's just a little. Well, so is a bite of dessert. It's just a little. But what does that do over long term when that just a little becomes a lot? So don't think that you're immune from it. Don't think that it doesn't have some detrimental effect to your relationship and to your marriage. At one point or another, it will rear its ugly head and it will destroy. It will destroy.
Absolutely. Yeah. Watch your boundaries. Set those boundaries. Right, next week, 8 o'clock, Nick.
Yes, I did know. I just thought I'd check us out and then go straight back. So
Yeah.
just
8
check.
o'clock next week, we are back and we are talking about grieving process, neurodiversity. Ashley is skiving as usual, so
I might be here. I just don't know if I'm going to be on time because I am in a virtual speaking summit next week.
let me know.
I will.
Right,
Really.
pop in if you can.
Exactly. Right. Thanks, Joshua. I think this needs a part 2. I'm unsure, but I'm sure we'll be in touch.
You mean you don't think this is going to be cured before we talk again?
There's a quick one.
I don't know what can be cured these days. Well, everyone, please share this, please subscribe, and let's keep kicking ass. So we'll see you on the flip side.
Great to meet you, Joshua.
Thanks. Nice meeting
Yes.
you all.
Bye.